John Drinko was one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. Once I worked for a genius who got his PhD in nuclear physics from MIT when he's 21, and I had a good friend who won the Nobel Prize, and I put John Drinko right in there with him. He was really an intelligent person with vision, and he had a practical side how you could do things. But he jumped on the library as a central part of moving the university into the 21st century, and sort of adopted that. And so that was the beginning. It was a series of lots of discussions with John over a period of, 7 or 8 years before we dedicated it in the fall of 1998.
We did not encounter any serious problems with the whole process, other than the time, and that's normal. And there are usually 2 or 3 years of planning and programming and determining resources before you actually, build the facility. And I took a great deal of pride in chairing the committee for all the programming and planning and bringing everybody together. I think that I take some pride in bringing the computer people and the library people together.
We worked as a team. It wasn't the library and computing services and at that time Distributed Ed didn't even have the name Distributed Ed. We worked as colleagues and members of always the student, faculty, and students' needs in the center. And then what do we have to do as a team to fulfill that vision? And that's how the whole project was done. It wasn't done with people's hats on of who they're representing.
The move went out for bid, so we wanted library moving companies that specialize in library moves. And that's very different from a regular move. They have special carts on which they move the books. They don't pack them up in boxes anymore. They put them on special carts. And you just label your shelves with letters and numbers so that you move them from one shelf tomorrow to its equivalent in Drinko. So there's nothing ever boxed. There's just these huge carts of books.
One of the biggest challenges was the dividing of the collection and what to take to the Drinko Library and what to leave in the stack area tomorrow. And we used a rule of thumb that anything that had circulated within the last 5 years would go to the Drinko Library. So there was a lot that had to be done. We did have a professional mover, but we had to do all the sorting and boxing and labeling and getting everything ready to move. So it was moving. Moving is a big job on any level, but when you think of moving a library as large as the Marshall Library, it was a challenge.
I think the plaque says, and I sometimes believe it may be more, but it says some 2,265 people made contributions to the construction of that library, and that far exceeds any other Capitol complex construction on this campus, far and away more than anyone else. So it did reach out and did incorporate the entire Marshall community in its construction. And it brought the people together and trying to build something that far exceeded anybody's hopes and expectations, that the sum is greater than its parts. So I think that was important to John.
I'm sure you've read the stories or heard the stories about his coming to Marshall with a shirt on that was made out of a flour sack, because that was the best his mother could do. And he went from that to being one of the most influential attorneys in the country during his lifetime. And he believed that he owed a debt of gratitude to Marshall for getting him on that path.
In many respects, what we've created is consistent with the vision that John Drinko had for what a university should be and what it needs to become, and how the library and Information Resources Center fits into that conceptualization of today versus tomorrow.
When he stepped out of the car, he was like a young boy. His whole demeanor changed. I mean, you could just see it in his eyes, and Libby's as well. Here was this huge monolith. And I mean, granted, it was nothing but, as I said, kind of a skeleton of steel. But then he began to ask questions as we moved around the construction area. And I think at that point, that's when I realized, you know, how important the message he was sending, that everybody be involved with this, because like him, like me, I was a donor, Mike was a donor. I mean, everybody there was a donor to the library. You had ownership at that point. And it wasn't just John's library or Libby's library. It was those who contributed. It was our library.